winds of the north carry old curses upon their backs, and none escape them who heed not the warnings. In the wild highlands of Scotland, in a time when the clans held sway and the mists clung to the glens like mournful spirits, there dwelt a poor widow with 3 daughters in a humble cottage upon the braes of Norroway. The land was hard, the soil thin, and the winters long, but the widow had raised her lasses with stout hearts and willing hands. The eldest, Morven, was fair and proud, with hair like ripe corn and a tongue quick to speak her mind. The second, Fiona, was comely and gentle, ever seeking to please. The youngest, Eilidh, was the bonniest of all, with eyes dark as peat pools, and a spirit quiet but unyielding, like the heather that blooms upon the rocks. Times grew ever leaner. The widow's small flock dwindled, the crops failed beneath untimely frost, and hunger sat at their table like an unwelcome guest. One evening, as the fire burned low and the wind howled about the thatch, the widow sighed deeply. "My lasses," quoth she, "we cannot live thus. Ye must seek your fortunes in the world, for I have naught to give but my blessing." The daughters pondered this, and Morven spake first. "Mother, I have heard tell of a wise washerwoman who dwelleth by the old mill burn. She can foretell a maiden's fate and guide her to her fortune. Let us seek her counsel." The widow agreed, for hope was all they had left. On the morrow, the 3 set forth, wrapped in their plaids against the biting wind, following the burn through the glen, until they came to a tumble-down hut, where an ancient crone bent over a wash-tub, scrubbing linen in the icy water. "Good day to thee, good wife," quoth Morven boldly. "We seek thy wisdom. Tell us how we may find our fortunes." The washerwoman lifted her head, her eyes sharp as a hawk's beneath her white hair. She studied them long, then pointed to Morven. "Thou, proud one, shalt ride in a coach, and 6, wed a lord with gold aplenty, and live in ease all thy days." Morven laughed with delight, her cheeks flushing. Then the crone turned to Fiona. "Thou, gentle one, shalt ride in a coach, and 4, wed a laird of good land, and want for little." Fiona smiled softly, content. At last the washerwoman fixed her gaze upon Eilidh. "And thou, quiet one," quoth she slowly, "shalt meet a great black bull upon the road. Climb upon his back, and hold fast, for he will carry thee to thy fortune if thou hast the heart to endure what cometh." Eilidh's face paled, but she bowed her head. "I thank thee for thy words," quoth she. The sisters returned home, Morven and Fiona full of dreams of coaches and fine husbands, but Eilidh silent, pondering the strange prophecy. Weeks passed, and one by one the elder sister's fortunes came true. First Morven met a rich lord travelling the high road. He courted her swiftly, and soon she rode away in a coach and 6 to his castle in the lowlands. Then Fiona encountered a prosperous laird upon the moor. He wooed her gently, and she departed in a coach and 4 to his manor by the sea. Eilidh remained with her mother, tending the cottage and the few remaining sheep, waiting for what fate might bring. The widow grew frail, and Eilidh's heart ached to see her suffer, but she spake no complaint. One stormy autumn day, when the sky was black as peat and the wind roared like a beast in pain, Eilidh went alone to the burn to wash linen. As she knelt upon the stones, beating the cloth against the water, a great shadow fell across her. She looked up, and there stood a massive black bull, larger than any she had ever seen, with eyes glowing like embers and horns curved like the crescent moon. The beast regarded her steadily, steam rising from its nostrils in the cold air. Eilidh's heart pounded, for she knew this was the creature of the prophecy. Fear gripped her, but beneath it burned determination she would not let her mother starve while her sisters prospered. With trembling hands she approached the bull. "If thou art come for me," quoth she, voice steady though her knees shook, "then I will go with thee." The bull lowered its great head, and Eilidh climbed upon its broad back, clutching the thick hide. No sooner had she settled than the beast turned and strode away from the burn, carrying her into the wild hills. The wind whipped her hair, the ground fell away beneath them, but she held fast, whispering prayers for courage. They travelled far that day, through glens and over braes, until night fell and the stars came out cold and bright. The bull came at last to a grand castle upon a hill, its towers piercing the sky. Lights burned in the windows, and music drifted upon the air. The bull carried her to the gate, where servants in fine livery awaited. A noble lord emerged tall and handsome, with hair dark as the bull's hide, and eyes kind yet sorrowful. "Welcome, fair maiden," quoth he. "Thou hast come far. Rest thee here this night, for thou art safe within these walls." Eilidh dismounted, weary to the bone. The Lord led her within, where a feast was spread, roast venison, wheaten bread, wine in silver cups. But as she ate, she noted the Lord's melancholy, and the bull was nowhere seen. In the morn, the Lord spake unto her. "My brother dwelleth farther on," quoth he. "The bull will carry thee thither. But heed me when thou seest him fight a great battle. Look not upon it, and speak no word, lest ill befall." Eilidh nodded, though fear stirred within her. The black bull appeared again at the gate, and she mounted once more. They journeyed through wilder lands, over rivers and mountains, until they came to a yet grander castle gleaming in the sun. There another lord greeted her, brother to the first, fairer still, but with the same sorrow in his eyes. He feasted her royally, and in the morn gave the same warning. "Look not upon the battle thou shalt hear, and speak no word." The pattern repeated a third time, the bull carrying her to the grandest castle of all, where the third brother, most noble and handsome, received her with courtesy tinged with sadness. He too warned her, "The bull must fight one final battle for thy sake. Watch not and speak not, or all will be lost." That night Eilidh lay in a chamber hung with tapestries of ancient heroes, but sleep evaded her. In the dark hours she heard a terrible commotion, without roaring as of beasts in combat, the clash of horns, cries of pain, curiosity and fear warred within her. At last she rose and crept to the window, peering out into the moonlit courtyard. There she beheld the black bull locked in deadly combat with a great red serpent, their bodies twisting in fury, blood staining the stones. The bull was wounded, sore, yet fought with desperate strength. Eilidh's heart went out to him, and unthinking she cried aloud, "Hold fast, brave bull, thou shalt prevail." No sooner had the words left her lips than the serpent vanished in smoke, and the bull let out a mournful bellow. He turned his great head toward her window, eyes filled with sorrow and reproach, then wheeled and galloped away into the night, disappearing over the hills. Eilidh fell to her knees, weeping bitterly. "What have I done?" quoth she. "I have broken the trust, and lost him forever." In the morn, the third brother came to her, his face grave. "Thou hast spoken," quoth he, "and the enchantment holdeth fast. The bull my brother was cursed by a wicked witch to bear that form, until a maiden should endure 3 battles without watching or speaking. Now he is gone to a place beyond finding, upon a glass hill where no foot may climb." Eilidh's tears fell like rain. "Then I will seek him," quoth she, "though it take my life." The brother pitied her and gave her 7 pairs of iron shoes and an iron staff. "Wear these until they are worn through," quoth he, "and thou mayest yet find him. But the way is long and perilous." Eilidh took the gifts, bound her arms with linen for strength, and set forth alone into the wild world. The iron shoes clanged upon the stones as she walked, her heart heavy but resolute. The quest had begun. If this tale of cursed beast and faithful maiden hath kindled hope or sorrow in thy heart, the trials of love that test the soul, then journey with me yet farther through these mist-shrouded highlands. Subscribe thou gently, as one might clasp a hand in friendship, and like this story, if its quiet courage hath touched thee, together we shall follow Eilidh upon her weary path. For the iron shoes are but the beginning. The road of trials is long, and none return unchanged who tread it. Eilidh set forth from the third brother's castle, with the 7 pairs of iron shoes upon her feet, and the iron staff in her hand, her heart heavy as lead, yet burning with resolve. The castle gates closed behind her with a clang that echoed like a funeral bell, and she turned her face toward the wild unknown. The morning was cold, the sky a leaden grey, and the wind cut through her plaid like a knife. She walked northward, for the brother had told her the glass hill lay beyond the world's end, where the sun touched the sea. The iron shoes were heavy, clanging upon the stones with every step, and soon her feet blistered within them. Yet she pressed on, through heather and bracken, over burns swollen with rain. The first day she met no soul, only the cry of curlews and the distant bellow of stags. At night she sheltered beneath an overhang of rock, eating the bread and cheese the brother had given her, whispering prayers for strength. On the second day she came to a dark forest, where the trees grew close and the light scarce penetrated. Wolves howled in the distance, and shadows moved betwixt the trunks. Eilidh gripped her staff tighter, singing old hymns to keep fear at bay. She walked until the first pair of shoes wore through, the iron soles grinding away upon the rough path. She cast them aside and donned the second pair, her feet bleeding but her spirit unbroken. Weeks turned to months. Eilidh wandered through glens and over mountains, crossing rivers upon stepping stones, sleeping in caves or beneath rowan trees. She lived upon berries and roots, upon the charity of crofters who gave her bannocks and milk when she chanced upon their bothies. Her clothes grew ragged, her face weathered by wind and sun, but her eyes burned brighter with purpose. In one village she heard tales of a great glass hill far to the north, smooth as ice and steep as a church spire, upon which no foot could find purchase. "A cursed prince dwelleth there," quoth an old shepherd, "wed to a witch's daughter against his will. None can climb it save with magic." Eilidh's heart leaped. "Tell me the way," quoth she. The shepherd pointed north, beyond the 3 rivers and the 7 hills, where the sea meets the sky. She thanked him and went on, the third pair of shoes already wearing thin. The land grew wilder. She crossed moors where peat bogs swallowed the unwary, forded rivers swollen with meltwater, climbed crags where eagles nested. Storms assailed her, rain that lashed like whips, wind that howled like banshees. Once a great eagle swooped down, mistaking her for prey, but she raised her staff and cried out, and it veered away. The fourth pair of shoes wore through upon a mountain path of sharp slate. Eilidh's feet were raw, her body thin from scant food, but she donned the fifth pair and continued. In dreams the Black Bull appeared, his eyes sorrowful, beckoning her onward. At length she came to a deep valley where a mighty river roared, too wide to ford and too swift to swim. Upon the far bank stood a crone in a hut of turf, tending a fire. Eilidh called across the water, "Good mother, how may I cross?" The crone looked up, her face wrinkled as old leather. "None cross save they pay my toll," quoth she. "What hast thou to give?" Eilidh had naught but her staff and shoes. "I have only my labour," quoth she. "I will serve thee a year and a day if thou ferry me across." The crone laughed, a sound like dry branches cracking. "A year and a day it shall be. Come." She rode across in a coracle of hides, and Eilidh served her faithfully, tending the fire, milking the goats, spinning wool by the dim light. The crone was harsh but not cruel, and in the evenings she told tales of old magic. "The glass hill thou seekest," quoth she one night, "is guarded by thorns and enchantment. The prince is held by a witch who would wed him to her daughter. Only one who loveth truly may break the spell." When the year and day ended, the crone ferried her across and gave her a gift, a nut of gold. "Crack this when need is greatest," quoth she. Eilidh thanked her and went on, the sixth pair of shoes clanging upon the stones. The land grew stranger. She crossed a desert of black sand where no grass grew, climbed hills of jagged rock where the wind sang mournful tunes. The seventh pair of shoes wore through upon a path of flint, and Eilidh's feet bled freely, but she donned the last pair and pressed northward. At last she came to the glass hill. It rose sheer from the plain, smooth and gleaming like ice, reflecting the sky in its surface. At the top stood a castle of crystal, sparkling in the sun. About the base grew a hedge of thorns thick as a man's arm, sharp as daggers. No path led upward, no foothold marred the glass. Eilidh fell to her knees, weeping. "I have come so far," quoth she, "and now I cannot climb." 3 days she sat at the foot, trying to scale the hill, but her feet slipped, the thorns tore her flesh. On the third night, as despair threatened to overwhelm her, she remembered the crone's nut. With her bleeding hands, she cracked it open. Within lay a rope of finest silk, strong as steel yet light as feather. Eilidh flung it upward, and it caught upon a pinnacle of the castle, holding fast by magic. With strength born of desperation she climbed, the thorns tearing her clothes and skin, blood trailing down the glass. At the summit she found the castle gates open, music and laughter drifting from within. She entered unseen, a ragged figure amid splendour, and beheld a great feast. At the high table sat the Black Bull No, a handsome prince in fine raiment, with eyes she knew well. Beside him sat a proud lady in jewels, and an old witch with eyes like burning coals. The prince looked sorrowful, his face pale. as though his heart were far away. Eilidh's quest had brought her to the witch's domain, but the final trial awaited. Curses are woven tight, yet love's thread may yet unravel them. Eilidh stood within the crystal castle atop the glass hill, a ragged figure amid splendour, her iron shoes worn to mere scraps upon her bleeding feet. The hall was vast and bright, lit by chandeliers of gleaming quartz that cast rainbows upon the walls. Tables groaned beneath feasts of roast swan and venison, wine flowed in golden cups, and musicians played upon harps and pipes. At the high table sat the prince, her black bull in human form, clad in velvet and silk, a circlet of silver upon his brow. His face was noble and handsome, with dark hair falling to his shoulders and eyes deep as forest pools, but sorrow shadowed them like clouds over the moon. Beside him sat the witch's daughter, a maiden proud and cold, with hair pale as frost and lips red as rowan berries. She wore a gown of silver tissue, jewels sparkling at her throat, and smiled possessively upon the prince. At the head of the table sat the witch herself, an ancient crone with eyes like burning coals and skin withered as old parchment, clad in robes of black embroidered with strange runes. The wedding feast was in progress, for the morrow was set for the prince's marriage to the witch's daughter. The curse bound him. Unless a maiden endured the trials without faltering, he must wed the one the witch chose. Eilidh's heart ached to see him thus ensnared, his spirit dimmed though his form was fair. She crept forward unseen, for the guests were deep in revelry, and took service as a scullery maid in the kitchens. The servants, pitying her weary state, gave her bread and ale, and she worked without complaint, biding her time. Each night she watched the prince from the shadows, seeing how he ate little and spake less, his gaze often turning toward the windows as though seeking something lost. 3 nights the witch's daughter was to spend with the prince before the wedding, that he might come to love her. But the curse held his heart fast, and he lay cold beside her. Eilidh learned from the servants that the witch had given her daughter 3 gifts to win him: a comb of gold that sang, scissors of silver that danced, and an apple of ruby that whispered secrets. On the first night, Eilidh approached the prince's chamber door, where the witch's daughter lay within. "Let me spend 1 night with the prince," quoth she to the lady, "and I will give thee this golden comb that singeth sweet songs." The lady, vain and greedy, laughed. "What care I for a ragged maid's company with him? Take thy night, and give me the comb." Eilidh entered the chamber, her heart pounding. The prince lay upon the bed, eyes closed in feigned sleep. She sat beside him and sang softly the lament she had composed upon her wanderings. "O Black Bull of Norroway, strong and true, thou carriedst me faithful through storm and through dew. 3 battles I watched not, yet 1 word I spake, and lost thee forever my heart now doth break. Remember thy promise, remember thy vow. Come back to thy maiden who seeketh thee now." The prince stirred in his sleep, murmuring her name, but the witch had given him a draught to deepen his slumber, and he woke not fully. In the morn the witch's daughter mocked her. "He knew thee not," quoth she, "thy night was wasted." On the second night, Eilidh offered the silver scissors that danced. The lady accepted greedily, and Eilidh entered again. She sang the lament louder, tears falling upon the prince's hand. O Black Bull of Norroway, fierce in thy fight, thou battled for me through the long dark night. I climbed the glass mountain with iron upon feet, to find thee enchanted in this witch's seat. Awake, my beloved, remember thy oath, the love that we pledged in the greenwood's troth. The prince moaned in his sleep, his hand reaching toward her, but the draught held him fast. The lady laughed again in the morn. Still he sleepeth, thy quest is vain. On the third night, the eve of the wedding, Eilidh offered the ruby apple that whispered secrets. The lady took it eagerly, for it promised knowledge of hidden things. Eilidh entered the chamber one last time, her voice breaking with desperation. She sang the lament with all her heart, loud and clear. O Black Bull of Norroway, my own true love, thou promised me marriage in heaven above. I wore out 7 iron shoes upon the cold stone, climbed thorns and glass mountains to claim thee mine own. Break now the curse, let the enchantment flee. Remember thy maiden who crossed land and sea. The prince awoke fully this time, the draughts' power broken by the truth of her words. He sat up and beheld Eilidh, ragged and weary but radiant with love. Recognition flooded his eyes. My faithful one, quoth he. Thou hast come. He embraced her fiercely, tears mingling with hers. The curse shattered like glass in that moment, the witch's power broken by true love's endurance. The prince's form held steady, the beast banished forever. But the witch heard the commotion and came raging, her daughter behind her. Thou shalt not have him, screeched the crone, raising her staff to strike. The prince seized his sword from beside the bed and stood betwixt them. Thy curse is ended, quoth he. Begone from my castle, or meet thy doom. The witch spat curses, but her magic failed. With a howl of rage, she and her daughter fled into the night, vanishing upon the wind. The castle rejoiced. Servants who had served under fear now cheered. The halls filled with light. The prince, whose name was revealed as Ronan, clothed Eilidh in fine raiment, tended her wounds, and declared her his true bride. Yet one trial remained, the return to the world below. True love is the mightiest enchantment, and none may stand against it. The crystal castle upon the glass hill rang with joy when the curse shattered like fragile ice beneath the sun. Ronan, the prince no longer bound in beastly form, held Eilidh close, his arms strong about her weary frame. Tears of relief and long-pent sorrow streamed down both their faces, mingling as they kissed for the first time as man and woman unbound by spell. The servants, who had served in fear of the witch these many years, threw off their silence and cheered, casting flowers and ringing bells throughout the halls. The very walls seemed to brighten, the crystal gleaming with new-found light. Ronan led Eilidh to the high table, seating her beside him as his true bride. Thou hast endured what no other could, quoth he, voice thick with wonder. 7 pairs of iron shoes worn through, mountains climbed, thorns braved, all for love of me, a cursed beast. Eilidh smiled through her tears, her hand coloured and scarred from the quest clasped in his. Love knoweth no curse too strong, quoth she. I would have wandered till the world's end to find thee. The castle's stores were opened, a feast prepared greater than any before. Minstrels sang of faithful maidens and enchanted princes, and the tables groaned beneath roast boar, salmon from northern rivers, and cakes sweet with honey. Ronan commanded new raiment for Eilidh, gowns of finest silk embroidered with heather and thistle, a cloak lined with sable. Her wounds were tended by gentle maids, salves of healing herbs applied, and soon strength returned to her limbs. Yet joy was tempered by the shadow of the witch and her daughter, who had fled into the night. Ronan gathered his loyal men, knights and retainers, long held in thrall by the enchantment, and spake of pursuit. "The witch's power is broken," quoth he, "but she may yet work mischief if left free." Messengers were sent to the 3 brothers in their distant castles, bearing tidings of the curse's end. They came swiftly, riding through the wild lands with joy upon their faces. The eldest brother embraced Ronan first. "Brother," quoth he, "the beast is gone, and thou art thyself again." The second and third wept openly, for they too had suffered under the witch's distant malice. Together the 4 brothers planned the castle's defence and the witch's final downfall. Eilidh, rested and clad in queenly garb, stood beside Ronan as they received the brothers. "Thy trials brought my deliverance," quoth Ronan to her before all. "Thou shalt be my queen, and rule with me in peace." The wedding was prepared with haste and splendour. Garlands of rowan and heather decked the halls, pipers played merry tunes, and guests came from far nobles, freed from the witch's influence, crofters who had aided Eilidh upon her quest. The ceremony was held in the great hall beneath banners of blue and silver, a priest blessing their union with ancient rites. When vows were spoken and rings exchanged, a band of gold for Eilidh, engraved with bull and maiden entwined, Ronan lifted her hand and kissed it. "No more iron shoes," quoth he softly, "only silk and ease henceforth." The feast that followed lasted 3 days, with dancing and song till dawn. Eilidh's mother was sought and brought from the humble cottage, her sisters summoned from their fine houses. Tears flowed anew at the reunion, the widow embracing her youngest with wonder. "My brave lass," quoth she, "thou hast found fortune indeed." But the witch's shadow lingered. Upon the 3rd night, as the castle slept in sated peace, a storm arose unnatural, in its fury thunder cracking like whips, lightning forking across the sky. The witch returned with her daughter, riding upon the wind in shapes of ravens and wolves, seeking vengeance. Alarms rang through the castle. Ronan and his brothers armed themselves, Eilidh standing resolute beside them with a dagger in hand. The witch burst into the hall in a whirlwind of black smoke, her eyes blazing. "Thou shalt not have him," screeched she. "The curse was mine, and mine the right." She raised her staff. Dark magic, crackling. But Eilidh stepped forward, holding aloft the broken remnants of her iron shoes, symbols of her trials. "Thy curse is broken by love, true and enduring," quoth she. "Begone, and trouble us no more." The witch lunged, but the brothers stood firm, swords drawn. Ronan met her staff with his blade, and light flashed where steel met magic. The witch's power, already weakened by the curse's breaking, faltered. With a final cry, she and her daughter dissolved into smoke, fleeing northward upon the storm wind, never to return. Peace settled upon the castle like dawn after long night. Ronan and Eilidh ruled wisely, their love a legend sung by bards throughout the highlands. Children were born to them, sons strong like their father, daughters fair like their mother, and the land prospered. Eilidh often walked the gardens, remembering her wanderings, and taught her daughters the strength of faithful heart. The iron shoes were kept in a chest of oak, a reminder that love's trials, though grievous, forge the greatest bonds. And so they lived in contentment till their days were fulfilled, proving that no enchantment, neither witch's curse nor world's hardship, can prevail against a love that endureth all things. The tale of the Black Bull of Norroway became a song by Highland firesides, a beacon for those who face long quests of the heart. And thus this tale of beastly curse and maiden's quest draweth to its joyful close, the enchantment broken, love crowned in triumph. If these Highland shadows and steadfast devotion have woven their spell upon thy heart, then let our wanderings through forgotten myths continue. Subscribe thou gently, as one might seal a vow of friendship, and like this story, if its enduring hope hath warmed thee, together we may yet seek more wonders from the old West. For the fireside tales are endless,